feeling. And when you marry
Thank
your
you.
children off, you get a new son or a daughter, you get a new feeling.
Same thing. Same thing. Sometimes when you make a bar mitzvah for your child, or you marry off a child, and you see the next generation developing on their own, you feel malchus. You know what I mean? That's what it is. It's not stam you're happy. Of course you're happy. You're very happy. Your daughter, your son. It's a deeper element of self that comes out. There's a part of self that you couldn't feel before. You couldn't feel it. And it's only because they're going independent. As your children move away, your daughter gets married, your son gets married, or another stage in life, and they make a life for themselves. In that separateness, you become a melech. You become a new person. There's something inside of you that comes out that never came out before. What is it? It's that quality of malchus that can only happen because they have made choices as a result of your influence that have created a new independence for them.
So why is there an empty nest syndrome with people? Why do they get depressive?
Yeah, listen, there's another side to it.
I'm saying that in other words, a person can make a choice
Yeah.
how they're going to react
Yeah.
to the situation. Now, I have a question about that choice, because the issue over there is that we've been discussing is that a person chooses a melech. So my question back to you is that choice that we have real, or is it just real narrow? Or what is it? How would the Rambam define our ability to be mamad before the Torah? That has to be something that is, if you use the words that we used earlier, it's in some shuta, that what we have is a real, is that correct to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what does the Rambam learn about free will and the Sefer?
The Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva, chapter 5, says that free will is the foundation of Torah and mitzvahs. And the Rambam is a great advocate of free will, I mean, very strongly. How all of Judaism is based on it.
It's an actual thing.
And despite the fact that we're born with dispositions.
To refer to the analogy before, it's not just my perception of it.
Right.
It actually exists.
Certainly the Rambam holds that way.
That when I'm aligning myself, I'm using that tool of free will to align myself.
Yeah. Bechira. Ja, welke nekuda? Ah? Clutter? Okay. Ja, okay. Da element verstanden? Ja. This is...
So important. I still have knowledge question about neshamas because this is
We'll talk. You'll see you have to go to Shabbos. He's dealing with Yom Tov now. You'll soon see what Shabbos is. This is all Yom Tov. It's not Shabbos. Yom Tov is Simcha, and then there's deeper than Simcha.
Shabbos is deeper than Simcha.
Yeah.
Shabbos is
Yeah.
nicht kein Union of Simcha, it's Onek.
Einig, yeah.
Shabbos mit Yom Tov zusammen.
It's a pnimius. Alles is pnimius da. You're stuck in chitzonius. You're stuck in chitzonius.
It's interesting that
There's no chitzonius here. There's no shtick. Nobody's making with their hands. And nothing is based on manipulation, protectia, family, Messiah, traditions, Mises, Yerusha, garnish. It should fit in, it should look good, had tables, garnished. Huh? Nor der Eberste. So the nor der Eberste. And look what the Torah is, only the Eberste, garnished, nothing else. Hafla of a fella.
that's why it's so simple. And yet, that's the most difficult thing in the world.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what basically separates
Yeah.
us from everybody else. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
There's one little thing.
Yeah. 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 Behiskarev ha'olul elilasoi. B'higalois nigla alav oir ha'ila v'tehi hasimcha g'doyla. Huh? Masig zayin the ilah v'tehi hasimcha g'doyla. Just the Allah being aware of its ilah is already a simcha, even before anything else. The awareness of your ilah, you're already there. I mean, to a significant degree.
Most of the time when we think about the ilah, we think about father, mother. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is
The ultimate ilah, of course. That's the father and mother, yeah.
that's basically the beginning of all the.
Of course. That's the ilah of ilah. Ilah's kol ha'ilahs. There's an expression in the Balatanya, ilah's kol ha'ilahs, v'sibas kol ha'sibas. The ilah of all the ilahs.
So is the word ilu comes from this?
The word ilah, I think it's connected to the word al, which means that which is on top, but not in space, in concept. The seed, the sperm, which is the source of the child, which comes from the father, which comes from his father, which comes from his father, etc., or mother. Adam and Chava were the ilah for the first children, who became the ilah for their children, and then that's how. So essentially, you can trace yourself back all the way to the source, Adam and Chava.
The ultimate programmer.
The ultimate programmer, right? The first code.
First quarter, yeah.
The first code. Okay, let's move on. We are up to Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph. I'm going to try to. Yeshakayach. I'm going to try to teach a little faster today, without taking away hopefully without compromising the clarity, because I want to really get into the thicket of Pesach. We don't have so many days left to Pesach. So I'll try to move. We're up to Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, close to the bottom of the page. The second line of the wide lines. Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, the second line of the wide lines. Levi Shadar Le Rabbi. You see the line starts Alav, Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, the second line of the wide lines. Levi Shadar Le Rabbi. Levi Shadar Le Rabbi Shichra Bar Tleisar Megani. Levi sent Rabbi beer made of dates, but it was made of 13 bundles of crushed dates. 13 bundles of crushed dates. Magine means crushed. So the shichra, the beer came from Tleisar, from 13 Magine, crushed dates. He basically took water, he poured it on crushed dates, and then took the same water and poured it on another bundle of crushed dates, allowing to absorb the taste and ferment. And he did this 13 times, so that the beer really absorbed the flavor and the taste of 13 bundles of dates. This wasn't just a process once, but 13 times. This is what he sends as a gift to Rabbi. Tame, Rabbi tastes the beer. Have a basim tuva. It was delicious. Did I translate basim right?
Exceedingly flavorsome.
It was exceedingly flavorsome. Omar, Rabbi says, Kegoin zeh roy lekadesh alav. Such a beer is worthy to make kiddush on. V'loimer alav kol shiras v'sishbachas shaba'olam. And to recite on it all of the praises and songs, all of the songs and praises to the Rebbeinu Shalom on this type of beer. Story is not over. Balayla, nighttime comes. Oy, 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 tsare. Did this beer cause him aggravation? The Rashbam says that basically what happened was shilshul. It affected his entire digestive system, and at night he had tremendous aggravation. Amar, he responds, Mi Yasron, Umi Fayes. This beer that causes so many Yisurim should be the one with which we appease and we thank the Rebbeinu Shalom. Sorry. He changed his perception on the beer. Amar Rabbi Yosef said, Eder berabim delayeshte shikra. I'm going to make a public vow that I will never drink beer of dates. Because Rabbi Yosef understood the consequences and he also understood the temptation. So he said, I'm not going to make a private vow. If I make a private vow, then I could come to a great sage or three, and say, and they'll ask me, if you would have known the circumstances and how it would unfold, would have you making the vow? And there's something called, right, Hataras Nadarim. We undo the Nadarim retroactively. But I'm going to do it barab, I'm going to do it publicly. And according to some opinions, and that's Rabbi Yosef's opinion, if you do it in the public, ein le hatara, they can't undo it. The halacha is they could still undo it, unless you do it al das rabbim, unless you do it on the mind of the rabbim, on their mind, not on my own mind. Then you can't undo it. But according to Rabbi Yosef and others, even if you do it barabim, you can't undo the neder. Amar Rava said, Eshte me zoyon v'la eshte shikra. I will drink even water in which they soaked flax. Water that was, flax was submerged in water which doesn't taste good. But v'la eshte shikra, I will not drink beer of dates. V'ramar Rava also said, Teve shakyuse shichra manda mekadesh shichra. He who makes kiddush on beer, his drink shall be beer. Meaning, it's a disrespect to kiddush if you choose beer over wine. And therefore, somebody who disrespects kiddush, because he doesn't use wine for kiddush, let his drink be beer. He won't be able to afford wine, but only beer. By his denigration of kiddush. He cheapened the kiddush, and as a result of that, he will not have the money to be able to buy wine, but his regular drink will be beer. Rav ashkeche Rabuna de Kaddish Hashikra. One day Rabuna sees that Rav is making kiddush on beer of dates. Amalei, he says to Rav, Sharei Abba lemikne istide meshichra. It seems like that Abba, this was his term for Rav, his name was Abba, or was a name of respect. It seems like Abba started to make money off beer. Basically, you went into the business of beer, and now you're buying coins through your sales of beer, which is why beer became so delicious and pleasurable for you, and that's probably why you're making kiddush on beer. Which means he probably saw Rav make kiddush on beer, even though wine was still an option, wine was a possibility, because beer was very beloved for him. And therefore he chose the beer over the wine. We learned before about Rav that sometimes if he liked bread, if he was hungry, he would make kiddush on bread, not on wine. So in the same process, Rav felt if you really like beer, make kiddush on beer. But why is he liking beer? So Rabbi Huna says probably you went into the business of beer and it's doing very, very well. So the beer has a special affection by you, and therefore you're making kiddush on beer. In this case, by him it was a bracha. By him it was a bracha because it came from his love. And why would he consider it more chaviv than wine? Because he was generating tremendous revenue from it. That's what Rabbi Huna said. The strange thing is that the strange thing is that earlier the Gemarah says that Rav said not to make kiddush on beer and not to make havdalah on beer, even if it's chamar medina. That's what Rav held. So suddenly what changed? I see in Rabbeinu Chananel, it's a story about Rabbi Bar Chana, which is a different story. But perhaps what I was thinking is maybe that's exactly what happened. Rabbi Huna knew that Rav holds you don't make kiddush on beer. And suddenly he's making kiddush on beer. So that's maybe what prompted Rabbi Huna to say this, that something happened for which beer became beloved, so it's beyond Chamar Medina. But that's what Rabbi Huna tells Rav.
In the beginning, he gave it to him as a present.
No, that's Rebbe. Levi gave the beer to Rebbe. This is Rav. That's the next generation. Tana Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Ein mekatcher ela ala yayin, vein mevorchen ela ala yayin. You don't make kiddush on any beverage, only on wine, and you don't make a bracha on any beverage, only on wine. Asks the Gemarah, really? Atu ashichra v'amaya milay mevorchen ela yishahakal niya b'dvarei. You don't make a bracha on beer and water, shakal niya b'dvarei? What do you mean you don't make a bracha only on wine? Amar Rabbi hachika amar. The Brisa meant, Ein oimrim havei kois shal bracha levorich ela ala yayin. Not you don't make a bracha only on wine. You don't say bring a kois shel bracha to bench a special cup of blessing only on wine. That's what he means. Ein mevorchen ela ala yayin is not talking about birchas hanenin. You make shahakal or on other fruits ha'etz ha'adama. What we're talking about is birchas hamazon kois shel bracha. When you're looking for a cup on which to bench, you have to use wine. Again, most poskim say that if the sheikhar is chamar medina, right, you can also use sheikhar for benching, because we say you could use it for havdalah. Certainly, you can use it for birchas hamazon. Havdalah is mamash a chiyuv. Birchas hamazon, it's not even clear that it's a chiyuv. So I just wanted to mention that according to this Gemarah, it sounds like you can only use wine. To use a cup of wine for benching is not the same chiyuv like havdalah. And if we paskin that for Havdalah you could use Chamar Medina if there's no wine, certainly for Berchas Hamazon. I'm just mentioning that lahalacha, that if there's no wine, most poskim say to use Chamar Medina for benching as well, if you're going to use a cup for benching.
It's opposite logic. Since Berchas Hamazon kosher bracha is not mechuyev altogether, so that's why if you do it only on the wine.
Right, okay.
So it's like the Chalachomer in the opposite direction.
Yeah. Well, Pailam, in Shulchan Aruch Birchas Hamazon Kuf Pei Beis, the psak is that you could use Chamar Medina. Of course, it's better wine. Tana Rabbanon.
There are people that using kosher bracha on nothing.
If there's no wine, yeah. If there's no wine.
I saw kiddush on the vodka, everything, but not kosher Birchas Hamazon. I never saw this on vodka.
Tana Rabbanon. Ein mekatchen ala sheicher. Another brayso says, don't make kiddush on beer. Mishum Rebbe Elazar ben Reb Shimon amru mekatchen. But in the name of Rebbe Elazar, the son of Reb Shimon, he holds you could make kiddush on beer. And the brayso says, mat emes yayin kol shehu. After kiddush, when you taste the wine, you have to taste anything, even kol shehu, even a little bit. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda aimer maloi lugma. No. Rebbe Elazar holds you can make kiddush on beer. Another halacha is, after you make kiddush, you have to taste the wine. So he says you could taste even a kol shehu. Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda aimer maloi lugma. Not a kol shehu, you have to put in wine, which is, maloi lugma means a cheek full of wine. A cheek full of wine means not that the whole mouth is filled with wine like this, but that if you bring the wine to one side, that cheek will be filled with wine. One side. That's what maloi lugmav means. If you bring the wine to one side of the mouth, the entire cheek, the entire cavity will be filled with liquid. And this changes according to the size of every person's mouth. But generally, a regular mouth, we say it's a little less than a revius. A revius is between 3.5 and 5.5 ounces. According to Reb Chaim Na, it's between 3 and 4 ounces, and this is the majority of a revius, which would mean a little more than 2 ounces, according to the share of Reb Chaim Na. That would be regularly maloi lugma. Amar Reb Huna Amar Rav. Reb Huna said in the name of Rav, V'chein tani Reb Gidol de Minerish. Reb Gidol from a place called Nerish also said, Hamekadesh v'tam maloi lugma, yatsa, v'im lav lo yatsa. If you made kiddush and you tasted a cheek full of wine, you were yotze kiddush. If not, you were not yotze kiddush.
We're talking about now how much you have to drink.
How much you have to drink after kiddush? How much you have to drink? Whatever you're making kiddush on, whether it's beer or wine.
The beer also has to be
Maloi lugamav, it has to be. And if not, Reb Huna taught in the name of Rav, you're not yotze. Yeah. You have to taste. Yeah. When you make a bracha on wine, whatever the bracha on wine is, you taste a little bit of the wine. By kiddush, he says it has to be maloi lugmav, a cheek full of wine. And I should say that the Gaonim hold that it has to be the Mekadesh himself. Like the Gemarah says, that the Mekadesh v'tam maloi lugma. Somebody else tasting it would not be yotze. But most of the poskim, including the Rashbam right here, says that if somebody else tasted it, it's also good, even if the one who made Kiddush himself was not Tayyim. So there's a big machlokes here how to teach the Gemarah. The Rashbam says, it doesn't have to be the one who made Kiddush. Anybody in the crowd can taste it, and that would do the trick. But the Gaonim hold that no, Kiddush is not like any other brachas. Kiddush, the Mekadesh himself is the one who has to taste from it. These are the two shittas. Malay lugmov is a taste. Yeah, there is a third shitta that you don't need one person to drink malay lugmov, but a few people could drink, and together it should be malay lugmov. That's one shitta. All the three shittas are brought in Shulchan Aruch. L'payil, as it's brought as the best is if the Mekadesh himself drinks malay lugmov, but even if not, even if other people drink malay lugmov, according to most shittas, you were still yaitze, even if just one person, not the Mekadesh drinks, but the Gaonim don't agree. Amr Reb Nachman by Yitzchak, Reb Nachman, the son of Yitzchak, said, Anot haninale loy gidul bar menashya v'loy gidul bar menyumi ela gidul stama. I have learned this brisa about the fact that you have to drink malay lugmov to be yaitze, not in the name of gidul bar menashya, not in the name of gidul bar menyumi, because before we had it in the name of Rav Gidul de Minerish. I heard it in the name of Gidul Stam. They just said Rav Gidul. Who cares? The answer is Lemirma Dideya Didei. It's very relevant in Gemarah. Could we make a contradiction from one position on another position? If we know which Rav Gidul it is, everything is on file. Then we say, well, there's an inconsistency here. He said this, and then he said that, and the two don't match. But because it's Rav Gidul Stam, so don't bring me one quote and then an opposite quote, because that could be two different Reb Gidul. So that's why it's relevant exactly which Reb Gidul said what. If in case we have a contradiction, if it's a contradiction that's real, or it's a contradiction that can easily be dismissed. Consistency, yeah. Lemirma didei adidei, to refute from him on him. Didei from him, adidei on him. Since we don't know which Reb Gidul it is, we can't question from one Reb Gidul on another Reb Gidul, because it's not the same person. Two people don't have to be consistent. One person, when it comes to halacha, ought to be consistent in his views. The Gemarah now, there's two datzah. The Gemarah goes on, Samach Lamincha. A new shtickle. We learned in the Mishnah, the opening Mishnah, that Erev Pesach, Samach Lamincha, close to the time of Mincha, you should not eat a meal until it gets dark. We wanted the appetite to be intact for the Seder, for eating matzah. So we said, Samach lemincha, before mincha, no meal until it gets dark. Frag the Gemarah, Boyalu, they asked a question, Samach lemincha g'doyle tanan, or dilma samach lemincha k'tanat k'nan? Which mincha? We know there's two times for mincha. In a theoretical sunrise, in a day when sunrise is 6 o'clock, just for simplistic illustrations, we'll use such days in the next sugya. Sunrise is 6 o'clock, the end of 6 hours is 12 o'clock. Right? 12:30 is Mincha G'dayla. 6.5 hours is Mincha G'dayla. Why? Because that's the time when they would start offering the afternoon carbon tamid. That's called Mincha G'dayla, a big Mincha. Why is it called a big Mincha? Because the day is still big. Oid Hayom Gadol. But then there's Mincha Ktana, small Mincha, because the day is very small. And that happens 9.5 hours, which means 3:30. And the reason is because you could bring the carbon tamid at 12:30, but usually they would bring it and offer it at 3:30. And that's called Mincha Ktana. When you say you're not allowed to eat Erev Pesach before Mincha, Samach LaMincha, which Mincha? Am I not allowed to eat at 12 or am I not allowed to eat at 3? Big difference. Can I have a meal at 1? Can I have a meal at 2? That's the big question. It says Samach LaMincha. And the Gemarah explains, Samach LaMincha G'dayla Tanan. Did the Mishnah mean that you can't have a meal before Mincha G'dayla? Mishum Pesach. Because I'm afraid of the carbon Pesach. Dilma Asila Mimshech, it may be a gewaldige meal, and you're going to have a great time, and it's going to continue. And the person will not bring the carbon Pesach. He'll become so immersed in this meal. Dilma, or maybe Samach L'Mincha Ktana Tnan. The Mishnah meant you shouldn't have a meal before Mincha Ktana, around 3. Mishum Matzah. Because of the matzah you got to eat at night. Dilma Asila Michla Matzah Achila Gasa. I'm afraid you're going to come and eat the matzah, achila gasa. Achila gasa means a coarse type of eating, which means no appetite, no flavor, because you're already satiated from your grand afternoon Erev Pesach meal. So I'm worried primarily later in the afternoon, mincha ktana. And I should just say, there's two ways of learning achila gasa. One is the way Rashi and Rashbam said it in the Mishnah, that it just means it won't be with appetite. Because you're so full, you're eating something, your stomach is not empty. And we want that the mitzvah should be done with enthusiasm, with fervor, l'tayavin. Because of the hidur mitzvah, you'll do the mitzvah, but it just won't be beautiful because you're not really interested. There's another interpretation that Tosfos brings achila gasa means that it's actually not called eating. There's two types of achila gasa. One is, I'm pretty full, I can eat more, but I'm not interested. There's no great taste. There's another type of achila gasa. You're so stuffed that to eat more is actually disgusting. And that's not called achila. For example, Yom Kippur, if you eat till Yom Kippur so much that you're stuffed and then you eat on Yom Kippur, it's not called achila. It's not called achila. Even if you eat a lot, you don't get an Isser Kares. Why? It's not called achila. It's actually called mazik. You're damaging yourself. You're not eating. You're destroying yourself. So there's two ways how to learn your achila gasa. One is achila gasa. You're going to eat to the point that you're going to be full, and therefore you can eat the matzah, but it won't be with a geschmack because you're not that full. You could still fill up more, but it's just not with passion because you're full. Or achila gasa actually means you won't be yoytze the mitzvah. Not only won't you do hidur mitzvah, you won't be yoytze the mitzvah. Because you're so packed, you know those feelings, yeah? After those meals, mekanisht ataman, right? Now to eat, you're not doing the mitzvah. It's not called eating. It's called damaging. You're stuffing down food, in a garbage can. Is that the pshat? Is that the pshat in the Gemarah? No, Korban Pesach had to be done in the afternoon. So what's pshat? Is it the Korban Pesach you could start doing right after the Tamid? Theoretically, 12:30. From 12:30 you could do the Korban Pesach after Chatzos.
What does it mean when Tosfos said the Torah on Yom Kippur, if you eat to the point where you're grossly overeating?
Yeah, when you
What does the Torah mean?
you're potter
You're potter
from chorus.
Is it possible that
Chorus.
that's one of the reasons the mitzvah to eat a lot on Yom Kippur? It's part of the...
Out of Yom Kippur?
It's like it's mitzvah to eat. No, it's like this. I don't know, I thought I heard it somewhere.
Even if you did that for Mesa, you'd still be potter?
Yeah. It's fascinating. Amar Ravina said, Tashma, I'll bring you proof. The Brisa says, Afilu Agrippa Samelech. Even Agrippa the king. Agrippa was a Jewish king from the family of Hordus, from the dynasty of Hordus. He was the king who experienced the Churban Beis HaMikdash in his day. The destruction of Beis HaMikdash in 70 happened in his days. And he was a fine man. We have different stories about him. He was a God-fearing man. Who ragil lechel b'teisha shois. He usually has his first meal beginning of the 9th hour of the day. Which again, if sunrise is 6 o'clock, he would have his meal at 2. After 2. His first meal, 2 p.m. Even he, even Agrippa shouldn't eat Erev Pesach that day until it gets dark. Little history. During the time of the Gemarah, they would have 2 meals a day, not 3 meals a day. Very important. There was no breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There were 2 meals a day. One was by day and one was by night. By day could be either morning or afternoon, and then one in the evening. The morning meal was not uniform. We learned before on Daf Yud Beis, different people had different times of eating. Most people ate b'shar revius. Shar revius would mean, again, the sunrise is 6 o'clock, would mean 9 o'clock, 4th hour, right? 7 is the beginning of the 2nd hour, 8 is the beginning of the 3rd hour, 9 is the beginning of the 4th hour. That's when most would eat. Agrippa would eat the 9th hour, his first meal. His first meal would be 2 o'clock. Interesting why. It's not clear why. Why would he delay? He's a king. Why would he fast till 2 o'clock? Did it come because Tanesim he wanted? Tosfos brings a theory because kings get up begimel shayus. Kings get up 3 hours later. That's why Kriyas Shema can go 3 hours after the beginning of the day, because Malachim Lam Gimel Shais, and Talmidei Chachamim would eat in the 6th hour, and he behaved like Talmidei Chachamim, and because by him he would get up the 3rd hour, so therefore he pushed off his meal 2 hours, so it became the 9th hour. But then Tosfos rejects that. But in any case, the Brisa says even he shouldn't eat Erev Pesach till it gets dark. So Ravina says, if the Mishnah meant you're not allowed to have a meal by Mincha Ktana, Hainu Revuse, the Agrippas. Now I understand the Chiddush of Agrippas. That even though the Isser of eating only starts at 3:30, which is 9.5 hours, 9.5 hours, the end of 9 hours, and he starts eating already in the beginning of the 9th hour. So that means when he starts eating, you're still allowed to eat. Nonetheless, you're saying even Agrippa shouldn't eat because he knows that his meal is going to go into the time that's forbidden. But if the prohibition is beginning from 12 o'clock, my revusid Agrippus, what's the chiddush that Agrippus is prohibited? Chol isur alei meikara. Obviously, he's not allowed to eat because the isur is already chal on him from the chatzos, which is before the time of his meal. So why would you permit him to eat a meal? I mean, even though he didn't eat yet anything in the morning, that's why he's allowed to eat after the time of the isur has come. The time of the isur has come. Wake up early and eat Agrifas. So if the isur starts at 12 o'clock, why would there be a chiddush that Agrifas would be allowed to eat? If the isur only starts at the end of the 9th hour, meaning 3 o'clock, then I could understand. Agrifas would start his meal a little before, let's say 2:30, 2:45, right? So you're sitting down to wash, and you know that in 10 minutes, and 15 minutes, and 20 minutes, yeah? It's over. So I can understand it's a chiddush. What's the chiddush? The chiddush is that he's not allowed to eat his suda today because he knows it's going to go into the zman of Isser. He didn't eat yet. And he's starting before 3 o'clock, right? He's starting not at 3, he's starting 2:30, 2:45, 2:15, whatever. Nonetheless, he's not allowed to because he's continuing into the time of the Isser, so he has to fast on Erev Pesach. That I understand is it's a big chiddush. But here, the Isser is starting at 12. Why would you think Agrifas is not included in it? It doesn't make sense. That's what he says. So you have to say the Mishnah means before Mincha Ktan. Still, why does the Braiseps make a ganze story with Agrifas? Before he finishes eating, the Zman of the Isser comes. 3 o'clock, the Zman of the Isser comes. Why should he be exempt from Klal Yisrael? We don't believe that anybody is above the law. Just because we don't say even Agrifas has to eat kosher. Even Agrifas has to have a seder. You're a Jew. I don't care if you're a king. Nobody's above the law. So what's ultimately the chiddush? Why are you talking here about Agrifas? That if he's not allowed to eat, even if it's mincha ktana, why should he be allowed to eat? You're starting a meal 5 minutes before the Zman HaYisr, 10 minutes, 20 minutes before the Zman HaYisr. Why would we allow this? The Gemarah says, I'll explain to you. Mao de Tema, I would think, Teisha shoyus la Agrifas ka'arba shoyus l'didandame. In terms of his inner biological clock, for him, 2 o'clock is like by us 9 o'clock. His body is used to eating at 2 and used to eating in the evening. Your body develops an appetite based on its nature, based on its internal biological clock. Just like when we eat 9 o'clock in the morning, Erev Pesach, it's not a problem for the Seder. Why? Our appetite is going to be intact. As everybody knows, even if you had a nice breakfast at 9 o'clock in the morning, Baruch Hashem, you'll be able to eat the matzah with appetite. For Agrifas, 2 o'clock is like hour 9. 2:30 is like hour 9:30. It's the same thing. Because his biological clock is used to it. And at night he eats dinner. Why does he eat dinner every night if he ate 2 o'clock? Why does he eat dinner? The answer is because he gets hungry. So mainly you would think for Agrifas, the system would change. It wouldn't disturb. So now, I still wouldn't make a new religion. We don't change halacha for every person. We say, oh, you have a good appetite. But since he's starting before 3, you have to understand the Gemarah. If he would start after 3, we wouldn't make an exception. I can also say I'm going to eat a meal at 5 o'clock and I have a good appetite, right? A lot of people can eat and eat and eat, unfortunately. We don't change halacha. But since he's starting before 3, you're going to allow it even though you know he's going to continue because he's starting when it's mutter and it's not going to take away his appetite. That's what we'd have thought. This is the Havamina. That's the Havamina. Atazai. Kamash Malon. The Bryce says no. Even a Grifas, who has Baruch Hashem a healthy appetite, and eating a meal at 2:45, even if it continues, won't compromise the mitzvah of eating matzah at night. It won't be an achila gasa. Whether we touch achila gasa, disgusting, or achila gasa is just not enthusiastic. Still, they didn't allow him to be over on this isser. You want to eat at 2 o'clock, no problem, but 3 o'clock you got to stop. You want to eat 2:45, but you only got 15 minutes. Even agrifas. Amar Rabbi Yosi, or other Agoyres, Amar Rabbi Asi. We're going to discuss right now. Amar Rabbi Asi said, this is only talking about a real meal. Does it really mean that 4 o'clock Erev Pesach you're not allowed to have anything? It says, Avol matbilhu b'minei targima. A person can dip his food into various fruits and meat without bread. In other words, if it's not going to be a satiating meal, a person is going to eat a snack or eat fruit or eat even a little piece of meat. We're not talking about eating to eat something. If you sit down for a meal, you're washing. Now, you're not washing on chametz because it's Erev Pesach. You're not washing on matzah. Tosfos says you're washing on matzah ashira, which you're not allowed to. Matzah ashira would mean matzah that's made with mei peris, with apple. You can't be yotze the mitzvah with that matzah. That you're not allowed to do, to sit down for a meal, egg matzah. But to eat some fruits, or to eat some snack, or to eat some basar, if it's not going to satiate you, that the Chachamim did not prohibit. They did not prohibit. The question is, what about chameshes minei dog on other grains? If, of course, we're not talking about chametz, you're not allowed to eat chametz, right? Yeah. So many argue that also would not be allowed because it's a grain. And that's why the Gemarah says only minei targima. There is an argument about that. There's an argument about that in Paiskim. So Rabbi Asi says you're allowed to eat even in the afternoon foods that will not satiate you, as long as you know it's not going to take away your appetite in the evening. The reason they use the lashon matbil, So Rashi says something interesting. Rashi says lefi shemachalim al yedei tibul. Basically, that was their euphemism for eating. They always dipped. So when they say dipped, it means eating. That was their way of talking about eating. That's what Rashi says. They used to eat most of their foods through dipping. Huh? Interesting.
And then Rashi says that's what they did.
Yeah. That stam achila was idei tibul. Rabbi Yitzchak metabel beyarki. Rabbi Yitzchak used to eat vegetables on Erev Pesach in the afternoon, even after the time of Mincha. Samach lemincha, he would eat vegetables. Tanya nami hachi, which is a proof to this minhag that you could. Tanya nami hachi, we learned a brayse that supports this. The brayse tells us, Erev Pesach in the afternoon, hashamish, the waiter, the servant, metabel b'bnei me'ayin. He could dip his food in bnei me'ayin. Bnei me'ayin are the intestines of the animals that they're shechting and they're using for the night meal, for the Pesach Dika meal. He can dip in it like he does a whole year. Whatever he's eating a vegetable, he's eating a fruit, he could dip in the kishka. And then he could give it to the guests for the meal. We don't have a clear proof from a pasuk, the Brayse says, but we have some testimony to it. Shenemar, the pasuk says in Yirmiyah, Niru lachem nir val tizru el kaitzim. You got to plow the earth. You got to plow the earth and make a furrow in the earth and not plant with thorns. In other words, if you want to have a successful planting, you have to make sure to first plow the ground, plow the earth, so that and take away the weeds and the thorns, because if not, nothing is going to grow well. That's what the pasuk says, and this is what the Brayse brings here to support this idea. What's the connection with this pasuk? The connection to the pasuk, there's two ways of learning it, Rashi and the Rashbam. Rashi learns that basically the pasuk is saying, don't plant and nothing will grow well because you have thorns everywhere and you didn't plow the earth, and then you won't benefit from your work. You won't have hana. You can't tell a shamish, work with food a whole Erev Pesach and you can't eat anything. It's just not fair. You can't have a person do work and not enjoy it. The enjoyment of a shamish is that he could chap a bis in the middle, right? You don't tell a guy he's working behind the restaurant the whole day and you're not allowed to touch the food. And if you touch, you know such restaurants?
I used to do Pesach. I used to be a big caterer. So I used to see in the middle, like every time I made a Shabbaton or the hotel,
Yeah.
the goyim used to disappear. I used to work as a 48, 50 hours straight. And the Jacobson tells me, you're not giving them tea in the middle.
Very good.
As soon as I started giving them tea,
They stayed.
were
They
working
stayed.
each time.
Yeah.
They stayed.
Yeah. You can't have a person harvest the field and not benefit. It's just not fair. You can't have him work without anah. That's why the shamish can eat on Erev Pesach and use that meat in the kishkas to make it a geschmacka meal. That's the interpretation of Rashi. The Rashbam gives a different interpretation, and he says that basically, when you plow the earth, you make it fertile, that it can absorb the seeds. He says you have to eat a little bit in the afternoon to open up the system, to actually increase the appetite. Too much hunger is also not good, even for the appetite. You have to open up the system, huh?
Everyone should do that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So in other words, it's not just allowed, but it's a positive thing. It's not only Rabbi Yitzchak would eat vegetables, it was a heter. It was actually, he felt it was a positive thing. That's a different interpretation.
Shamish metabel, only the shamish.
But then, v'noiston lefnei archim, you would teach, according to this, you should give it to the guests also. Let them have something.
Raw intestines?
I don't know.
They used to say,
It could be cooked intestines.
used to say that eating brings on the appetite.
Yeah. Eating brings on the appetite, yeah.
I want to know, you said the normal way of eating was dipping. But what did they use to dip when it was not Pesach?
You're saying that usually it was bread. I guess in this case it wasn't bread. So they would use vegetables or fruits. Yeah, I guess vegetables. You know, like the carrots, the cucumbers, you dip. Tchina, sesame seeds. Rava have a shasi chamra kula maila yom de pischa. Fascinating. Rava would drink wine a whole Erev Pesach. A whole Erev Pesach. Why? Kehecha de nigre libe. He felt that drinking abundant wine triggers his appetite. It arouses his appetite. When you drink a little bit of wine, it is actually satiating, but he didn't drink a little bit. It says kule maila, a whole day he would drink, because he says he felt when you drink in large quantities, it actually opens up the appetite. The nechel matzah tfei urta, so you should be able to eat more matzah at night. More matzah at night. In order for him to be able to eat more matzah at night, he drank more wine on Erev Pesach.
Isn't that Gemarah says that poor Talmud Chacham who doesn't have much food, he should take a big gulp of wine because when you fill up your
It
stomach-
satiates. It satiates. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amar Rava said, where did I learn this? Where did I learn that wine develops the appetite? What do they say? Develops the appetite? It whets the appetite. Where did I learn this? How do I know this? The Tanan, I have a Mishnah. It doesn't say I learned it from experience. It says I learned it from a Mishnah. The Mishnah says in Psachim, interesting Mishnah. Bein hakoises halalu imratza lishtas yishta. Between the 4 cups of wine, you can have a drink. Between the first cup and the second cup, right? We make the first cup, we say Kiddush. The second cup is only at the end of saying the whole Agada. Between the first and the second, you can drink. Between the second and the third, you can drink, right? We do the second cup and then we go washing and we do matzah, mar, kairich, shulchan aruch, and then we're going to bench. You can drink. Imratza lishtas yishta. You don't have to, but you could. Ben shlishi l'revi'i lo yishta. Between the third and the fourth, the third is benching, and then we start saying Hallel, and we finish the Haggadah and we do the 4th cup. Over there, you should not drink. V'i amrit misat sayid. If you believe that wall wine just satiates you and takes away the appetite, amayishta. Why do they allow you to drink between cup 1 and cup 2 and between cup 2 and cup 3? Haka'achila matzah, achila gasa. You're going to eat the matzah, achila gasa, just like you said you're not allowed to eat in the afternoon because not to eliminate your appetite. It's going to cause you eating of matzah to be a coarse eating. Elashmamin migra garir. Zaraya, you drink enough wine, don't worry. It whets the appetite, it doesn't ruin it, and therefore there's absolutely no concern. And that's where Rava learned that wine is good to drink to whet the appetite. It doesn't go into this category of taking away your appetite. Yeah. Yeah. Reb Sheshes have a Yosef b'tanissa kol malayim de Pesach. Reb Sheshes used to fast a whole day Erev Pesach. The exact opposite. A whole day he would fast. Even in the morning. Even in the morning. So the question is why?
But it says you're not allowed to fast there.
No. No, he would fast. Reb Sheshes would fast the whole day, and let's remember Maseches Sofrim says that the B'chorim fast Erev Pesach. So, yeah. Name, fragt the Gemarah why? Name, Kosav Reb Sheshes, perhaps Reb Sheshes holds that Samuch lemincha g'doyle tnan umisham pischahu. Maybe Reb Sheshes holds when it says you're not allowed to eat Samuch lemincha, it means mincha g'doyle, which means 12 o'clock, because of the Karban Pesach. Dilma mimshich v'asil limnuyim elamevet pischahu. We're afraid that you may eat and be consumed by the feast and not do your Karban Pesach. And it's interesting. Reb Sheshes lived a long time after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, but the point is that they were masakin it then, and it didn't change even later, because things that were done by the Beis Hamikdash we didn't change necessarily after the Churban. That would be an interesting comment here. Now, but here is one more vignette. V'savar la ki hada amar Reb Oishia amar Reb Elazar. Perhaps Reb Sheshes agrees with the view of Reb Oishia in the name of Reb Elazar. Machshir hoya ben pseire bepesach sheshachat oy shachris barba asar lishmoi umitzafra zman pischahu de kula yoyim chazi lepischa. There is one view that holds that you could bring the Karban Pesach from the morning. One view. Most views hold only from 12:30, from after Chatzos. But there's one view. Bemseire used to be kasher, a Pesach that you slaughtered in the morning of the 14th, lishmoi. Lishmai means it has to be done with intention for the person who's bringing the Pesach. Because if it's not done for his intention, then he wasn't yotzei the mitzvah of Karban Pesach. He has to bring a new Karban Pesach. It has to be done lishmai. It has to be done lishmai. So from the morning is the zman of Pesach. The Savar B'Mseida holds Bein Ha'arbayim means Bein Erev de Esmail LeErev de Ha'idna. Between the end of last night and the evening that's about to come. Bein Ha'arbayim is an interesting term. We don't know what it means. It means Bein Ha'arbayim means between the two nights. Which two nights? We translated, most of us in halacha, we usually Bein Ha'arbayim, between the first Erev and the second. What's the first? The first is when the sun starts dipping to the west. After midday, as the sun starts dipping to the west of the horizon, that's called Erev 1, night 1, evening 1. Erev 2 is when the sun leaves the horizon, which is basically sunset. Bein Ha'arbayim means in the afternoon. That's how we teach Bein Ha'arbayim. Ben Pseira teach Bein Ha'arbayim between last Erev and the new Erev. When was the last Erev? Right before dawn break, when night ended. What's the next Erev? The coming evening. That's the time you make of the Karban Pesach. Meaning not in the afternoon, but throughout the whole day. From morning till evening.
Why wouldn't it fall the whole day instead of Ben?
That's Bein Ha'arbayim, between the two evenings, meaning between the end of last evening, which means right before dawn break, let's say 5 in the morning, right? Until the evening. That's Bein Pseira. If Reb Sheshes holds like that, so then, when are you not allowed to eat Erev Pesach? If you teach mincha g'doila, and he holds like Ben Pseir, the Karban Pesach is a whole day, then you're not allowed to eat a whole day. That's why he fasted. Pashtalachically, the Gemarah says, no need to do this. Amri loy, no. It could be he holds that the Mishnah means mincha ktana, 3 o'clock. Shiny Reb Sheshes the istines have. Reb Sheshes was a delicate man, a sensitive man. His metabolism, his body was sensitive. Itoyim betzafra midi. If he would eat anything in the morning, le'urta le'havamani le'mechla. By night, eating would do nothing for him. It would just be a difficult task. Some people, would be an achilagas. Some people, food is difficult. They eat a little bit and they're done. You see it. You see some people, they can't eat more on the plate. I'm striving to get to that madrega one day, but it hasn't been successful yet. Maybe if I juice for a few weeks, Rabbi. Huh?
When you see it, you admire it.
You admire it, yeah. They eat and their body right away tells them, "Bob, too much. boom, and they already don't eat. They don't eat. Yeah. I'm married into such a family. All my brothers-in-law, sisters-in-law. A little food, they're already satiated, they're nauseous and so forth. Yeah. Yeah. Reb Sheshes was that type of person, so that's why he fasted. It was a personal thing. He knew to enjoy the Seder, he needs to fast. Tosfos asks, even though there's no Korban Pesach now, so why would Reb Sheshes be worried? But Tosfos says the Isur of the Zman Habayis he holds would not be bottle.
What is the same about Chumetz there? Until the 6th hour, that what?
Tosfos says that lechatchila you're supposed to bring the Korban Pesach in the afternoon according to everybody, because it says you're not supposed to bring the Korban Pesach when there's chametz, and chametz starts in the afternoon. So even Rabbi Yehuda ben Pseira would agree that lechatchila you have to bring the Pesach in the afternoon when there's no chametz. But since b'di eved you're yoitz if you do it in the morning, Reb Sheshes would hold that you're not allowed to eat. That you're not allowed to eat even in the morning. That's the havamin of the Gemarah. That's the havamin of the Gemarah. Zog the Gemarah. Afilu oni shebi Yisrael lo yochel at sheyosef. The Mishnah said even a poor man shouldn't eat until he reclines. That's what the Mishnah said in the beginning of the Perek. Itmar, we learned. Matzah tzarich haseba. What do you mean you have to recline? When? When you eat matzah, you have to recline. Why do you have to recline? Because matzah we eat commemorating the freedom. The Jews were expelled from Egypt and they didn't have time to bake, to allow their dough to ferment, right? Lo hispik b'tzekes. So it commemorates liberation. That's when you recline, which is representative of the royal aristocratic way of eating. Marer ain't tzarich haseba. Why? Marer represents the subjugation, not the freedom. Itmar mishmei Reb Nachman, we learned the name of Reb Nachman, tzarich haseba. I'm sorry, Yayin, when it comes to wine, Itmar mishmei Reb Nachman, tzarich haseba. Reb Nachman taught wine, yes. V'itmar mishmei Reb Nachman, ain't tzarich haseba. There were other students who said, Reb Nachman said, you don't need a seba by wine. So the Gemara v'loy pligi. They're not arguing. Ha-betarti kasi kamoi, ha-betarti kasi basroi. One view was talking about the first 2 cups. One view was talking about the last 2 cups. And the Gemara says, but we don't know what that means. Amri le'lahaigis and amri le'lahaigis. You can explain this in 2 opposite ways. Amri le'lahaigis, you can explain it in one way. Trei kasi kamoi bo haseba. What Reb Nachman meant was the first 2 cups need reclining. You know why? The hashtahu, the kamaschel acherus. Because now is the time that our liberation is beginning. When do you do the first 2 cups? For Kiddush. And at the end of the Haggadah. That's when you're telling the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim. That's when you should recline. But Trei Kasi Basroi, the last 2 cups, Leibo was say, but why? My Dahava, it was. We already spoke about Yitzias Mitzrayim. We left Mitzrayim. We're good. Now you can just drink in a regular fashion. Amri Lalahaigis, there are those who say the exact opposite. Adirab. Trei Kasi Basroi, Bo a Seba. The last 2 need a Seba. Because Ahi Shaita, the Kahav Yecheres. That's the time when you are already free. In the beginning you still have avodim. Very deep question. When do you celebrate freedom? When you're working on it, or when it happened already? In many ways, when you're working on it. That's the first shitta. The second shitta says, no, that's when you're an evet. It's after you're chayres. So what's the conclusion? Hashta ditmar hachi vitmar hachi. Now that we have a paradox here, what do we say? Idi v'idi b'ay ha-seba. Both need a seba. The first 2 cups, the last 2 cups, so all 4 cups should be a seba. Because Reb Nachman said something, we're not clear what he said, and therefore we do everything.
The nikuda here is much deeper.
Yeah.
The first understanding that you drink first 2 cups is when you celebrate your freedom. You just commemorate the freedom. The second opinion is, no, you're still in slavery. You go out now of slavery, and then you can sit. So it's a big not community. So the first one is just a historic event, commemoration, celebration, l'chaim. The second one is no, you're still a slave. This is a seder for you to get out from it.
To get out. When you get out of it, you can celebrate.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Pragdan. Very interesting. What if I decide to lay down on my back? You ever saw a person, you bring a bed, a cot, You lay down, prakta, lo yishmei haseba. This is not haseba. Lying on the back, or by the way, on the stomach, that's not called haseba. Hasebas yamin, lo yishma haseba. Hasebas yamin, meaning, if you do it on the yamin, on the right side, it's not haseba. The classic reason for this is brought in the Rashbam, because most people are righties, and therefore if I'm with my right, if I'm reclining on the right, I'm going to bring the food with the left hand, which is uncomfortable. So therefore you should recline on your left side. That's what the Rashbam teaches us. V'loy oid, furthermore, the food may enter the windpipe before the food pipe, and the person could chas v'shalom choke. It could endanger him. Rashi says that this is referring to the prakta. When you're lying on your back and eating, so then what happens is, when you're lying on your back on eating, so Rashi is saying that can cause a danger, because when you're stretched backwards, so what can happen is, the epiglottis is the flap we have on the throat that protects the windpipe, right? So that when you're lying back, the epiglottis can open up and the food could come down the windpipe. That's what Rashi explains. Rashi says it's talking about prakton, when you're on your back. The Rashbam says, so why does the Gemarah say it after the case of reclining on the right? So he says it's talking about when you're reclining on the right. When you're reclining on the right, he says that the two are near each other and it can open up the windpipe and the food could come down there. It is problematic to understand this Rashbam, because as we know, the food pipe is behind the windpipe, right? So it's hard to understand what the Rashbam means that it's on the right. It's very hard to understand. The food pipe is directly behind the windpipe, directly behind. So it's unclear. It's not sure what the Rashbam means when he says that the esophagus, that the food pipe is on the right side. It's hard to understand what he meant. But that's what the Rashbam says. Rashi says it's talking about if it's backwards. Rashbam says that the statement is referring to when you recline on your right. So he says that when you lean on the right, it's a choking hazard. That's what the Rashbam says. Now, really, the food pipe is directly behind. It's behind the windpipe. What does the Rashbam mean when he says that the food pipe is on the right side? It's hard to understand. I saw that the Art Scroll says that there are there are differences in anatomy between the left side and the right side. You know, the right bronchus branches off the windpipe into the right lung at a far more gradual angle than the left one does into the left lung, which might account for why leaning on the right side presents a choking hazard, where leaning on the left does not. According to this, even somebody who's left-handed and therefore eats with his left hand should not recline on the right side, because according to the Rashbam, that would be a choking hazard. Isha etzel baila loy baya heseba. A woman in the presence of her husband doesn't need heseba. V'misha chashuvahi, if she's a chashuva woman, a prominent woman, meaning if she's a royal woman, tzricha heseba. She does need reclining. Now, it's interesting that many texts of the Gemarah take out the word eitzel baila. It just says isha. A woman doesn't need heseba without eitzel baila. Just a woman doesn't need. In other words, even if she's not married. And the reason is because this was not the derech of women. Because it was not their way, so therefore it's not freeing for them. But if she's an isha chashuva, meaning if she always does it this way, if that's how she does it, then it needs a seba. Our Gersa says isha eitzel baila, specifically in the presence of her husband. But many Gersas just says Isha Stam doesn't need a Seba, any Isha. And if she's an Isha Chashuva, she needs a Seba.
Isha Chashuva in her husband's eyes.
And the Mordechai brings, and it's brought in all the Paiskim today, that Hayoim Kol Hanoshim Nikroyas Chashuvais. All the women are called Chashuvais. That's what's brought in Halacha. Yeah. All the women are called chashuvos. Yeah. The way the Shulchan Aruch Harav puts it in Taf Ayin Beis, A woman, whether she's married, she's a widow, she's a divorcee, doesn't need Haseba, because it's not the derech of women to be mesiv. It's not cheres for them. They don't think it's exciting. If she's a prominent woman and her derech is to recline, she needs it. V'chol hanoshim shalanu nikra'os chashuvos. All our women are called chashuvos. This comes from the Mordechai, Rabbeinu Yerucham, and the Ramah. Reb Moshe Isserlish and Shulchan Aruch Siman Taf Ayin Beis says this. All our women are called chashuvos. Nonetheless, the Ramah says the minig is that women do not recline. Why? If they're all called chashuvos today, right? Why don't they recline? And the answer is, and this is very interesting, because there is an opinion. It's a very interesting opinion, the Ravia's opinion, that Bisman Hazeh, there's no need to do any reclining. All these Gemarahs completely are nullified today. Why? They said today reclining is not a sign of liberty. A whole year, huh? You think it's inconvenient, okay? You say to do it by the Marer based on this. In other words, even a whole year we don't recline, right? Even the greatest kings and noblemen sit regularly. So basically, these Rishonim, it's the Raivan and the Ravia hold that there's no Chiyav HaSeba today, because it's not a Derech of Cheres today. Others argue that since it was the Derech of Cheres, I would say Pesach is all about history, and the past is the present, so we still do it. But since there's a shitta that you don't have to, so the women rely on that shitta, and they don't recline. I never heard of that. But there is this shitta that they were soymech on the words of Ravia that you don't need a seba today. But because there is such a shitta, there are many leniencies if somebody ate without his seba about doing it again. As we will see, there are leniencies because there is that shitta in halacha. It's not accepted by most poskim, but it's a shitta that's brought in halacha. The Ramah brings it about women. That's why they don't have to do a seba. In other words, since women b'chlal don't need a seba, the only reason in our times they would have to is because they're called chashuvos. So because there's a shitta that nobody needs a seba, they rely on that shitta not to do a seba. The main thing of this halach is you have to remember that all women are called chashuvos. The Gemarah says, Ben etzel aviv by haseba. A son by a father needs haseba. Iboyalu talmid etzel rabbi mai. What about a talmid by the Rebbe? Does a talmid need haseba? Toshma, Amar Abaya said, Ki avinen beimar. When we learned in the Beis Medrash of the Master, Rabbi, Zaginon abirke da hadadi. We reclined on the knees of our friends. You're basically sitting near your chaver, and you reclined on his knees, and you ate. Ki asina and Rabbi Yosef, after Rabbi passed away, and Rabbi Yosef became the Rosh Hashiva instead of Rabbi, Amar Lon, he told us, Lo yitzri chisu, Chavre, you don't need to. Moira Rabach, Kemoira Shamayim. Pirkei says, the awe of your teacher is like the awe of heaven, and therefore in front of your teacher, you're not mechuyev in a seba, because there's a mitzvah of Moira Rabach, which cancels out the mitzvah of Heseba, which is a certain form of uninhibitedness. So you don't have to.
Doing a seva in
Ah?
front of Hashem.
Ah?
Doing a seva in front of Hashem.
Meisva. The Braise, they asked the question, it says in the Braise, Makoil Adam Meisva afilu Talmid etzel Rabbi. You should do a seba with everybody, even a student by a Rebbe. The Gemara says, Kitanya Ahi B'Shulya de Nagri. That Braise is not talking about a teacher of Torah. It's talking about an apprentice by a carpenter. A Talmud by a Rebbe is an apprentice by a carpenter. Him you have to do a seba if you're sitting by the carpenter. Over there you don't say Moira Rabach Kemoira Shamayim. And by the way, the Gemara doesn't say it's talking about Rabbi She'enoi Muvak, like not your permanent Rebbe. From here we learn that any Rebbe, you don't do a seba. Of course, Rav Shemachal al Kvoide Machal, if a Rebbe is Machal on his cover, that's fine. And then they could do a seba, but he's not obligated to be Machal on his cover, and they're not obligated to do a seba unless he says, I want you to do a seba and I forgo my honor and everything. But an apprentice by a carpenter, you still have to do a seba.
Why is it an Indian of not showing cover by leaving? I didn't understand with the Rebbe.
Imagine you're sitting in front of a Rebbe. Mizitz Dazai. Es ist nicht so.
It's not like pumping out, you know.
I know. He's doing it for matzah, but it's a certain form of royalty. In front of a Rebbe, you sit with awe, with reverence, with respect. Chassidim would go into the Rebbe, they wouldn't sit down. Why? Sitting down is not a bad thing. I'm just giving an example. There's a certain form of respect. Father comes in, you stand up. Sitting is not bad, but it's just a certain respect that you show. Huh? It says even the poskim say that if you're sitting at a seder with a Talmud Chacham, muflig b'doirei, or unique Talmud Chacham in the generation, even if you didn't learn anything from him, you also don't do a seder. Just a certain... Huh?
I understand what you're saying.
The Lubavitcher Rebbe would do the seder by his father-in-law. He wouldn't do a seder. The year after his father-in-law passed away, he did a seder. They did a seder. The Rav could be Meichel. That's not a problem. But he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to because the mitzvah of Meir Rabach doesn't get pushed away from this. He doesn't have to. Yeah. No, because it's Hashem Elokecha Tira LeRabbis Talmidei Chachamim. So there's a limit from Torah, so it's stronger than a Seba. A Seba is only a Chi of the Rabbanan. Talmidei Chachamim is less Hashem Elokecha Tira. I think that's why it's... but it's learned from S, yeah. Yeah. And the Rambam brings it as one of the mitzvahs, to be Mechaber Talmidei Chachamim. So that includes awe of a Rebbe. That's why it doesn't take away from his Seba. That's why it cancels a Seba. Unless the Rav is Moichel on his covet. Yeah. Iboyalu, they ask Shamish Mai. What about a Shamish? A waiter. Does he have to do his Seba? Tashma, the Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Hashamish Achal Kazayis Matzik Sho Meisiv, Yotza. A Shamish who eats a Kazayis Matzah reclining fulfills his obligation. What do we see from here? Meisiv in, loy meisiv loy. Shma mina boy a seba, shma mina. Rishon ben Levi says he needs a seba, at least a kazayis matzah. Which, by the way, from here you learn that lechatchila the mitzvah min hamufcher is to recline by the whole meal. It's just if you did a kazayis matzah, it's enough. It's enough. Because a shamish, you can't make him recline the whole meal. He's a waiter. I mean, he's not going to be able to do his job. But b'di'evid, if he eats a kazayis matzah, it's good. So we already learned that matzah needs a seba, dalet koises need a seba. An interesting question is when you say matzah, many poskim say it means the first kazayis of matzah and also the afikoyman. But not everybody. Some say not the afikoyman. Paul, we try to do the afikoyman. We try to do the afikoyman also. Have a wonderful day.